Welcome back, folks. I just want to remind everyone that on November 6th, there will be a very important election, not just for congressional seats in New Jersey and across the country in the House, but key U.S. Senate races. Joining us now in one of those key races is the senior senator from the great state of New Jersey, United States Senator Robert Menendez. Good to see you, Senator.
Good to be with you, Steve.
Interesting. Donald Trump, you and I were talking before we got on camera. You have actually never met him.
No, not before he became president, no.
Okay. He did. There was a phone call we'll talk about later to you. Your impressions of him as president, as a leader, and if you could take policy out of it for a second, stylistically as a leader, impact on the nation. Go.
I don't think he leads. I don't think he leads. He embraces the most authoritarian figures in the world and gives the back of the hand to our closest allies. He doesn't bring people together as we expect of the president in common cause. He divides us by who we are, what we look like, where we came from, and who we love. I expect a president who tries to bring the American people together. He doesn't reach out in the Congress, unlike other presidents, including President Bush, who I served under, to try to forge bipartisan compromise. So I don't think that those are the characteristics of a leader we want, particularly in the highest office in the land.
Bob Buchan was here a couple days ago. We did the interview with him. He had very strong, clear things to say. He said, listen, I'll disagree with the president when I think he's wrong, and I'll agree with him when he's right. You say? I say
baloney. The reality is that he was Trump's finance chair in New Jersey, a delegate for Trump at the Republican Convention.
Excuse me for interrupting, Senator. He said, when I asked him that question, he said, I gave the money to the Republican National Committee.
No, he gave some to Trump before he gave it to Chris Christie. When he was in the race. Then he gave it to Trump. Then he also gave it to the Republican National Committee. He was a delegate for Trump at the convention. He was his finance chair in the state. But more importantly, he has consistently taken views along with the president that are against the interests of New Jersey. And he gives large amounts of money to the entities that support the president, like the Heritage Foundation. He gave them $500,000. And that institution is opposed to everything he now says that he is a part of in New Jersey: a woman's right to choose, reasonable gun safety measures, the Affordable Care Act. All of a sudden, I don't give $500,000. I don't have $500,000, but I don't give $500,000 to an entity that ultimately doesn't agree with all my core principles. That's who he is. He's another vote for President Trump.
Now, you've been very critical of Bob Buchan on the pharmaceutical side. Said as the CEO of Celgene, you accused him in your ads. I mean, you cannot miss these spots right up until the election on both sides. You said, you know what, as CEO, he really worked hard to keep generic drugs to people who were dealing with cancer because Celgene had a cancer drug that was more expensive. Do you really believe that?
No question about it.
Why would he do that?
You know who says that? President Trump's FDA commissioner called out Celgene as the worst company in the nation to stop generic drugs, cheaper drugs, from going to the marketplace. Signaled them out. But beyond that, I think that Bob Buchan has a bigger problem. It's the $280 million that the federal government, he ultimately settled with the federal government for false pursuit of drugs off-label, meaning not what they were approved for risking cancer patients with potentially not letting them know about fatal side effects, for going after Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA system. And he settled for $280 million. Those aren't small potatoes.
Ethically challenged?
Well, look, there are many ways to think about ethics, right? The one thing I'll say is if you preyed upon those most vulnerable, which is what Bob Buchan and his company did, cancer patients who needed that specific drug that he raised by over 200% while he was lowering it in Russia by 50%, that he was stopping generics from going to the marketplace here when he made a deal with a Russian company to do exactly that, have a generic version. When you prey among the most vulnerable, it says something about you. And so if you had the power of a United States senator, would you not be preying among the most vulnerable among us?
Senator, you've been in public life for how long?
In public life,
quick calculation.
Over 40 years.
And you ran for the school board, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
It might have been 19 or 21.
I was 20 when I got elected, yeah.
So, long, distinguished career. The question of ethics. The federal jury deadlocked in your case. The U.S. Department of Justice opts not to bring a follow-up case. The United States Senate, the Ethics Committee, quote, severely admonishes you for, quote, accepting gifts from Dr. Solomon Melgen. The spots, again, you see them from Republicans and from Bob Eugen. You said you made mistakes. Could you be more specific? What mistakes do you actually feel you made, A, and B? Could you understand a significant number in New Jersey and saying, I don't know if I trust Bob Menendez?
Well, Steve, look, a couple things. First of all, as you noted, a federal judge exonerated us of the most significant charges. 11 out of 13 jurors of average New Jerseyans said, we don't believe in the government's case, and several of them severely criticized the government for even bringing the case. And then a Republican Department of Justice ultimately dropped everything. So at the end of the day, I regret that my understanding of the disclosure rules were different based upon what I saw other members actually disclose, not disclose, and based upon my own understanding of the rules. So I regret that. And before the Ethics Committee decided, before the government was involved, I amended and took care of virtually all of it. But what I have never made a mistake about is where I came from, who I'm fighting for in this state. I'm fighting for everyday working families. I live that life. Bob Eugen is a multimillionaire. He doesn't live that life. I've lived a life. I have people judge my judgment by when I, bought 1 million people health care in New Jersey under the Affordable Care Act and eliminated pre-existing condition discrimination for 3.8 million New Jerseyans. I'll have New Jerseyans wonder whether my judgment is right when I passed into law the major legislation on autism for the state that has the highest rate of autism. I'll let them judge how I went to fight for them after Sandy and brought $60 billion to the region. And when the government turned its back on Sandy victims, I reopened those cases and got $300 million for average New Jerseyans who were denied by their government. So I'll let them judge the totality of my work and my history.
Senator, let's shift gears. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, if you will. What's your greatest concern about the potential of the federal government through the Trump administration changing, dismantling, doing whatever to the Affordable Care Act, which many argue, you included, is far from perfect?
Oh, absolutely. Not a perfect law. We had dramatic change in healthcare in the country. But what did it do, Steve? And this is what I'm afraid that the Trump administration has systematically gone about trying to kill the Affordable Care Act, which means for 1 million New Jerseyans losing their health insurance, which means for the 3.8 million New Jerseyans who have a pre-existing condition, the ability to be discriminated against as well. The lifetime caps that we eliminated under the law so that if you had a serious illness, the Alzheimer that took my mother's life, the costs that were involved, if she had lifetime caps, she'd be one illness away from losing everything she ever had in life. So all of those protections that were created under the Affordable Care Act, the expansion of health care, and attempts to cost control are in the midst of being undermined by the Trump administration as it stands in federal court saying that the law is unconstitutional.
And Bob, respectfully, Senator, Bob Eugen says that he supports many aspects of the Affordable Care Act, but the ones that are onerous on individuals in terms of what they'd have to pay for that coverage, he's against. Isn't your position similar to that?
Bob Eugen wants to have it every which way. And I guess when you have no record other than having gouged cancer patients and made a killing off of them, when you pay $280 million.
Is that the totality of his record as the CEO of Celgene?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, he's in that suit of the federal government. He's there bragging about how these 2 drugs were the drivers of Celgene's profit. But these are the 2 drugs that they were promoting for purposes not approved by the Food and Drug Administration. 2 drugs that had potentially fatal side effects that they never let doctors and patients know about. 2 drugs that they ultimately raised the prices of dramatically. So at the end of the day,
hold on, the FDA did not stop those drugs.
Oh, no, on the contrary. The FDA gave them a limited approval. They went far beyond what they were approved for. And the FDA gave them warning after warning to stop what they were doing. My point is, you can't say, I like some of the Affordable Care Act, but I don't like all of it. You can't say that I'm for a woman's right to choose and to give $500,000 to the Heritage Foundation that opposes a woman's right to choose. You can't say I'm for Judge Kavanaugh, who consistently has undermined in his decisions civil rights and, I believe, women's reproductive rights.
By the way, as we do this program, that is in question, the Kavanaugh nomination. Real quick, if I can do this, got about 2.5 minutes, Senator. The role of the Department of Justice in terms of pursuing justice in criminal cases vis-a-vis the role of the Trump administration in getting involved there, you say?
Well, I say that, first of all, they should be going after the lady, the information that Dr.
Not
Ford.
just that, I didn't mean just that case, but the president said, hey, listen, there are 2 Republican congressmen who are being indicted by the Department of Justice. What are you doing that? Telling Jeff Sessions, as the Attorney General, what are you doing that? Is that appropriate for a United States president?
We expect that of dictators and tyrants in the world to use law enforcement against individuals because of their politics or for them because of their politics. Not in the United States of America. It's a perversion of our system of justice.
Can you do immigration real quick? You're for strong borders. You for the wall?
No.
Real quick, where do we need to go? Because where we are is not where most Americans want to be, Senator.
Sure. Well, I want to be back where what I did with John McCain when he was alive in the Gang of Eight, passed in the Senate comprehensive reform, strong border protection, a pathway to legalization for the undocumented, a hard one, but a just one, the opportunity to think about future flows in immigration. What do we need in our workforce that we can't domestically achieve? Think about family reunification as continuing core value, which, by the way, Donald Trump is in the United States because his grandfather ultimately was brought in by a sister who claimed him under our family reunification. That ultimately led to him being born in the United States and ultimately led to him being president. It's pretty ironic. So we can do much better. That never passed the House of Representatives. I want to return to that bipartisan agreement and give dreamers an opportunity to dream. I'm proud that I got President Obama to pass DACA, and now this president has undermined it.
Real quick, how much of this race, 30 seconds left, how much of this race is about Donald Trump, how much about Bob Eugen for you?
Oh, it's going to be of what I achieved for New Jersey, and it's going to be about Eugen being another vote for Donald Trump.
United States Senator, the senior senator of New Jersey, Bob Menendez. Senator, thank you for joining us. Stay right there. Again, folks, the election is on November the 6th. This program, other great programs, particularly on public broadcasting, you'll find meaningful conversation about the issues that matter to you most. But democracy is not a spectator sport. So make sure you get out there and vote on the 6th of November. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for joining us.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, the law firm of Gibbons PC, New Jersey Resources, Summit Medical Group, Verizon, Delta Dental of New Jersey, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State.